Okay, so welcome back everyone, and today I'm gonna knock out the heavy class vehicles. If you weren't mad at me before, you might be a little bit upset where I rank these, but just keep in mind this is my personal tier ranking, and you are free to disagree. That's totally fine. We all have our different lists and such. I'm gonna try to be as objective as possible. I have a bunch of hours in this game, a bunch of time testing and doing research on all these vehicles, and I have 40 plus reviews right now on YouTube. And yeah, I basically have dedicated my whole gaming experience since this game released. I've exclusively played SnowRunner and no other game, just to try to give the best information that I can. So based off of that knowledge, I'm going to try to rank these as best as I can. Like I said, I'm going to be as objective as I can, but I do have some bias and I do have some favorites. So you might see those come out a little bit. So just be aware of that and have some grace for that as well. But anyways, let's get started here. So we're going to get started, and first off, I just want to knock out something right now. The only truck that's going in the D category right here is going to be the Big Cat, and we will showcase the Big Cat too. So I'm going to be switching back and forth from the game to that list as well, and you might hear me say because I'm doing this all on one take, and also I haven't been feeling too well, so you might hear me clearing my throat as well, so just forgive me for that in advance. Okay, the 770G. Two great things this vehicle has going for it. Actually, a couple things. One, it has the second strongest engine in the game that's shared with a bunch of other vehicles. That is a wonderful thing about this vehicle. The second thing, it has the largest tires in the whole game. They are the best tires for grip in the whole game for the hauling class vehicles. Now that excludes the 420 Tatra tires. Those are different. That's a scout class vehicle. This is a hauling class. So yeah, these are the largest tires and they have the best mud tire rating. So they get some pretty darn good grip. However, this vehicle can't haul anything but the high saddle, which is only for one mission on the Yukon, and it can't actually haul any actual high saddle uses for this truck. It also has a fuel carrier, but it's very hamstrung by not having all-wheel drive. And yeah, its differential locking is always on, but for its back wheels. However, it has a huge fuel tank for the use case, but overall, I don't want to spend too much time. It's just not going to go through a ton of things. And you just don't really use it at all. It didn't impact my game. I really only used it for one mission, and then other than that, I used it for a fuel tanker if I could get it to some places. And it's really hard to kind of maneuver and get through some places because it's just very big, bulky, and lacks all-wheel drive. Excuse me. Okay, so we're gonna knock out the C category right here, and then we'll concentrate on these two up here. Here we go. So this might make a couple people mad, but the Aramatsu Forester is a C for me, and the reason for this is pretty simple. I do feel it's a good vehicle. However, in recent updates, they've allowed some trucks to put small frames and medium frames on their cargo beds. So some of those trucks that you're going to see me put up into the A, the S, I believe they can move logs better. A lot of them can. This is a pretty safe bet though for a self-loading logging apparatus. I do feel it should have a stronger engine. I wish it didn't have this engine that's shared with a bunch of heavy-duty class vehicles and a couple off-roads. I kind of wish it had a bigger engine, and also I wish it had always-on differential locking, and that would, I think it would bump it up to an A. It is a very, very good truck for my pace. I love using it for logs. I definitely will continue to use it, but I've made it this far in the game without using this vehicle, and I just feel that some vehicles that are up there in the A and definitely the S, I would choose to move logs over this just because they have better off-road ability. But this definitely is a great truck to use, especially in hard mode. So, and also it can only really do logs, so it's kind of limited in how it can impact my game. With the scope of hauling other cargo is more parts of the game than just logs, even though logging contracts are super long. But yeah, excuse me once again. Okay, so the Azov Antarctic, I don't feel like should go anywhere other than the sea, and because honestly, in my game, I really have only leaned upon it a few times, and I can count those few times that I've actually said, hey, I'm gonna get the Azov out, and I'm gonna like depend on it to get me somewhere, or do this mission for me in a certain place. The only time I've ever really used this thing to get something done is when I know that it's not going to run into like a tippy scenario, mostly of flat, deep areas. It has an amazing engine. This is the strongest engine in the game. This is the #2 heaviest vehicle in the game, I believe. I would have to double check that. I don't have my sheet right in front of me, but I have done a review on this, so go check that one out too. Has some of the largest tires in the game as well. They're all muds, come stock with them, extended heavy winch, etc. Has always on all-wheel drive, and its differential locking is switchable. I think it would have a lot better performance outside of low gears if it didn't have switchable diff lock, if it was always on. I think I mentioned that in my video as well, but overall, it's a good truck. It has very limited add-ons. They recently gave it these two right here, and then they've always had the flatbeds on there, and the addition of the ramp towing platform they recently added. But yeah, I think they're just better options. Better options to use these add-ons on other vehicles, just because I don't think this thing is necessarily tippy, but it just gets into a spot where it's so tall that it becomes tippy, I guess. So yeah, the Azov Antarctic, it's a good truck. I'll show you guys where I actually deployed this and used it. To go open up this warehouse, I went up here and grabbed this little trailer. It's called Warehouse Troubles. Pulled that through this bog and then up to here to finish this, and then to open up these areas. And I crossed this river as well. Other than that, I haven't used it much because I just felt that I could do a better job with other vehicles that didn't have this large tires. So I just didn't feel it was needed in my game. I never felt like I needed to reach for it to get me through something. So that's why I felt it was down here. Okay, let's move on. We'll talk about the Navistar. The Navistar for me, I think, is a B+. Right up here in the B+. And for a couple reasons. The Nav has a very, very strong engine. Excuse me. I'm still sick and I'm trying to get over it. Navistar can only do a few things. Only has a low-high saddle. Can do logs as well. That kind of dropped it down a little bit. I think if it could do more things. I think if this had the crane and the low saddle, I probably would have given it the nod to go into the A category. And that would probably been a little bit of a bias for me. But I think that would have definitely bumped it. Its tires aren't necessarily small. 49 inches, an inch away from being the smallest or the largest out of some of the trucks that get 50s. So it would have 50 and tie those. Some of those off-road trucks that have those large 50 tires. It's only 1 inch below. Has pretty good tire options. I love the OHDs. I think they're this is what should be on all the American trucks. So I'm super glad about that. Other than that, the Navistar doesn't have all-wheel drive. Oh, no, it has all-wheel drive, doesn't have differential locking, so that really hurt it for me. I think if it did have differential locking or those more add-ons as well, I think it would have slid up there in the A really easily. Another thing that kind of bothers me about it is the smoke. It flares smoke like crazy and it burns fuel like a madman. It does have a huge fuel tank, but yeah, I love this truck. It's one of my favorites, but I gotta be fair. And also I've just got this truck probably a few months ago because I couldn't purchase it because I was on Epic Games. So after I got it, I started using it like crazy, but still, I think it's a B plus, almost an A. Very, very, very good truck. All right, next we're gonna talk about the Dan. The Dan for me, I couldn't put it in the B. I absolutely think I couldn't put it as an S either, but I think it's a very strong A. And I think a lot of people will disagree with me on this one, but in my review, I talked about how it's a little bit front heavy. And for that, I think I think that's a good thing, because I usually run around with the saddle low, and I try to put as much weight on this thing as I can. It shares the strongest engine in the game with all of those big trucks like the Zikz, the Kolobs, etc. Azov and Antarctic. Has the special off-road gear, or the advanced special gearbox. It gets pretty good fuel consumption, honestly, for having a massive engine. I think it's due to this gearbox as well. Another thing people kind of get bent out of shape about is its long overhang here. Kind of see it does slant upward, but you will get nose collisions because it is front heavy, and that's why having loads weighing it down in the back can help this, as well as the active suspension that just came out here in Season 6. And ever since I've been running around with the active suspension up, I don't feel that its stability has been hindered in any way. It's a very, very stable truck. It has pretty good add-ons for being a heavy class truck. You'll see not a lot of heavy class trucks have as many add-ons. The Zikz does, as well as we'll see this can use a sideboard bed. It doesn't have a small crane. That was something that I think held it back from being in the S, and probably its front overhang as well. But yeah, it can do most things. I love this vehicle. I can't say enough good things about it, even though it does have a huge chin. So let's try to move on here. I don't want to make this one too long. I know my last video was over 40 minutes, so we'll continue. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the Derry Longhorn 3194. 3194 for me goes into the B. I don't feel like it's a super strong B, just because of its use case. It has gotten a lot better since they've given it the always on features. Let me go to it here if I can find it. I do think this truck is super good. It has the OHD tires that are super big. 52 inches is definitely respectable. Like I said, it got the always on features, always on. So it gets very good grip values. It's a pretty darn heavy truck. It has a very strong engine. I believe it might be tied with the number 6 strongest engine in the game. However, it is a very heavy truck, so its power to weight is at A. It gets no raise suspension. And also, the drop axle hurts this a lot. You can use the drop axle for certain things like keeping stability and perhaps giving this thing a bump up in clearances as well, just to get its front end over things, because it does have a little bit of a front end that hangs over. However, it only has a high-low saddle, and I just like vehicles that can do more than one thing. If it had a saddle low with a small crane, this would be amazing. I probably would put this up in the A. So yeah, it is a good truck though. They've definitely done a better job recently, giving that thing a good bump in performance. So I'm very happy with that. Okay, so now we're going to talk about its brother, the 4520. I know in my 3194 video I said I think this has better performance still with this engine. However, I'm putting the Derry Longhorn as an A, and I think because the new engine, it's one of the heavier trucks in the game. Yes, it cannot use a bunch of things, but however, it's very maneuverable for being a heavy duty truck. New engine gives it really good really good power. I forget what number engine, I think it might be number 4 now, strongest engine. I think it might be tied for number 4. I think something that hurts it on fuel consumption is it doesn't have the advanced special. It does have the high range, and it can run the high range a little bit better with this new engine. I don't think it's going to be the best. It has a very large fuel tank. It still burns fuel pretty good. And also it does have 50-inch tires, and it gets muds as well. So mud tires being one of the heavier trucks in the game. being very maneuverable, has its rear axle can steer as well, so it has a very tight turning circle. So getting this big hulking truck into places is actually pretty easy, and it's pretty darn stable as well. So I felt this was an easy A for me. I love this truck. It also can carry logs, so try this one out if you haven't used it. Definitely with a new engine, it makes it so much better. So Derry Longhorn, awesome vehicle. Okay, let's go up here to the S. We're gonna put something up here, and we're gonna talk about these Kolobs, the 74790, the 74760, and the 74941. I believe these go into the S, and this is something I debated in my mind for a while, because something I think about is the use case. Like, how am I going to use these trucks? Like, what are they going to be used for other than hauling the only thing they really can, which is high saddles or towing a hitch trailer? So the 74760, this is the heaviest vehicle in the whole game. So it gets the best grip. It has the strongest engine in the game as well. Advanced special gearbox. Gets the active suspension as of phase 2. The Yukon region, they gave it this, so it increases its ground clearance. This helps a ton. Huge fuel tank, huge tires. Yeah, it's gonna do really well in any case scenario. So I think I couldn't really exclude it from the S category just because of all of its weaponry, I guess you would call it, that it brings to the table regardless of its frame add-ons. So I definitely felt this should be in the S category, because, you know, if you're in a pinch, it's a vehicle you can definitely count on to get you through something. So yeah. And the same thing here with the 74941, and then we'll bring that one up here as well. I do feel that the 74760 is a better truck in my opinion. However, I do like how this does have a switchable all-wheel drive. I wish its diff lock was switchable, because it would or its diff lock was always on, because I think it would have better performance outside of low gears, like the other Kolob, the 74760. This one also shares the largest engine in the game. It's one of the heavier vehicles in the game too. I think it might be number 4 or 5. I'd have to double check my numbers. Gets the advanced special gearbox. The switchable all-wheel drive gives it the option for you to toggle that off when you're on paved roads or anything like that. So you have the potential for fuel savings there. I believe its fuel tank is a little bit smaller than its brother. It is a little bit smaller, but still has the active suspension. Both of these vehicles, they can just high saddle usage, but overall they're so strong that, yeah, there's no way I couldn't say, like, no, these are not going into the S category. They're going to go to A or below that. So I believe they sit up here. I don't think they're the strongest S, because there's other options that I would take before I decided to grab these as a contingency plan. Okay, so we're going to knock out these specific trucks here. I'm going to go through and we're going to talk about these. I believe that the Pacific P12 is a B. I believe that the P16 is a B. But I also believe that the P512 is a better B than them all. And we'll talk about this a little bit here. So let's talk about the P16 first. Where's he at? P16. So the P16 also has the best tires for hauling class vehicle. They are 57 inches. One of the larger tires in the game as well. Have the best grip value other than some other trucks. Has a very strong engine. However, it's a very, very, very heavy vehicle. And that's why it's an A- power to weight. And another thing I think it's hamstrung by is it doesn't have all-wheel drive. So if anybody has driven this, you already know the struggles of the P16. It is a stable truck. However, if you do tip it, it is so hard to tip over. So it just doesn't have a ton of uses. You know, it can do the high saddle. It's very good at the high saddle. And I think it's very good at hauling long logs as well, because all that weight sits right where these massive, amazing tires are, as well as that's where all the power is going with the always on differential locking as well. So the power is just fed right to these back two axles, which is really nice. However, it's, I never really depended on the P16. I definitely, in my second playthrough, I put more use on it and found out it was a lot better than I thought it was. I still think it is, it's going to be in the B category, but I don't think it's as good as its brother. And for this reason, because I think if I were to choose between the Pacific trucks, I would probably choose the P12, just for the simple fact that the P12 has all-wheel drive and always-on differential locking, as well as has the same engine that it has, the Advanced Special as well, but also so it doesn't have those amazing tires that the P16 has, and it does feel kind of weak because these vehicles are heavy. They do have a super strong engine, but the thing is, when you load them up with weights, you're going to see they start to struggle a little bit. But I think this gets the nod over the P16 just because it can use all these things here. Yeah, you can. It's a very, very good support vehicle. It's probably one of the best crane vehicles in the game for me. If you look at how high this thing sits and where those outriggers come up to, that's a 57-inch tire, and they come above that. So people saying the Dan and the 73 210 are good crane trucks. They are, absolutely. But I also know that you can get these things snagged on stuff going through some tight spaces. And I felt that this one was pretty darn good. So yeah, very good truck. Definitely stays in the B. I don't think I can move it any higher. So the P512PF, this is a really, really awesome vehicle. There's a couple things I don't like about it, and we'll talk about those here. P512PF has those big tires, 51 inches, and they're also coated just like the P16's tires and also the 770G, so you got those increased grip values from them. So like the P16, it doesn't have all-wheel drive. Its diff lock is switchable. The P16's is always on. I wish this was always on as well. I think if this vehicle had all-wheel drive, this probably would be one of the better off-roading trucks in the game, just because its tires are amazing. Has a very, very strong engine. The only thing is, I think this truck can start to eat up a little bit of fuel, and it doesn't have a lot of it. 53 gallons translates to 200 liters. Yeah, as the only tire option, doesn't really get doesn't have anything other than those tires. Can't get chains, so that's going to be another struggle. But yeah, it can do a lot of things. It has way more add-ons than both of those vehicles, so that's something that I really like as well. Yeah, and it can also do this. This is something that I love, is a self-loading logging apparatus. So there's not many vehicles that can do this. This is one of them. I think the P12 is one of them as well. So this truck is a pretty good blend between the P12 and the P16. It's just a little bit smaller, a little bit more nimble, and it can just do multiple roles. But yes, it is a little bit hamstrung with not having all-wheel drive, and its fuel tank is pretty scarce. So I think it's definitely in there in the B category. So, and we're actually going to switch. This goes actually in between here, and then let's move on. Okay, so we're going to talk about these Tatras right now. The Tatras, for me, definitely go up into the A. Both of them do. And I think they stay like this because I believe, in my opinion, I think the Tatra Force is my favorite out of all of them. It suits my gameplay. I like the slow crawling gameplay. And also has a ton of options for tires. Basically starts out with all terrains, goes right to OHS, and then muds, and it also has chains as well. It's very good. Has the strongest engine in the game as well. there's a lot of trucks that share this engine that are from the Russian or Ukrainian or Czech trucks that share this. Has the advanced special. It gets pretty good fuel mileage. Very, very big fuel tank. Also has a huge roof rack, and you can see all those jerry cans up there. So quite a bit of fuel for it to tap into if it gets slow. Switchable features for the all-wheel drive and diff lock. I think if it had always-on diff lock, like I've said, this is like I'm beating the dead horse here, but this would be, I think, one step below the Zikz, and I think, yeah, as soon as you fire up diff lock on this thing in low gear, it acts totally different, and just try it out and give it a shot there. Another thing I like about this, it can do this. Put the sideboard with the crane, and also tow a hitch trailer. To do this as a heavy truck, it's that's pretty awesome, and to be able to have the roof rack. So yeah, I thought that having it in there as a strong A, definitely it deserved it. So, but also it doesn't have a ton of things to do. It's a little bit front heavy, and also this little ramp towing platform really doesn't operate that well. So yeah, that's kind of why I didn't throw it up there in the S, just because, you know, I didn't really lean upon this as well. It wasn't something that I was like, hey, I need the Tatra Force just to be successful. So yeah, but it was very close to being an S for me, actually. And then the Tatra T813. The T813 has arguably the best fuel consumption in the game. There's people that have made those claims. However, I don't think that is the case. I've seen this thing climb up into well over 5.0 gallons per minute under load. I think it's a super stable truck. One of the more stable Tatras in the game. They're all really, really stable, but you know, I've had really good success with this. It has very few add-ons, and it's kind of why it got the ding down here to the A category, as well as not having the always-on diff lock. I think it could have had way better performance values with diff lock as well. It does have a huge roof rack up there, as you can see, giving it more fuel and able to repair itself as well on the road. So that's super nice. It can go super far, has great range, pretty good clearances with those 50-inch tires, and the camber kind of being positive. It kind of sits pretty high for an 8x8. Also shares the strongest engine in the game, coupled with the advanced special gearbox. So yeah, it does get really, really good fuel mileage, I guess you would say, or fuel economy. So yeah, the Tatra is a very, very strong truck. If it had more things to offer, like a crane or some other things, I would probably use this thing a lot more than I do. So, but I felt an A was a good spot for it. Okay, so let's talk about the 73210. The 73210 is an easy S. It goes right up in here. I don't think many can really dispute that it's not earning of that position as an objective sense. It does have a huge nose that everybody's going to talk about. Yes, it has a huge nose. They've switched it up how it clips through the terrain instead of just straight up stopping it. So if you played back in the day whenever you would hit something and you would come to a dead stop instead of being able to actually move through terrain with it, you would actually be a bit thankful for that. Also, they've given it the active suspension. This has helped it a ton. I'm so thankful for that. It does share the best engine in the game. 10 tires, can rear steer, so it's very nimble. It can maneuver into tight spots. Turning circles very sharp. It's a very stable truck. It's like a Swiss Army knife. It can basically do whatever. If there's a truck in the game that I would say can do everything, it's probably going to be this truck here. It also can do this. Not many trucks can do that. So yeah, the extended fuel tanks, the maintenance frame, I mean, has the larger fuel tank value as well as the parts. So yes, it's just a very, very handy truck. It really is. It's become one of my favorites. I really didn't like it when I first bought it in my first playthrough, but it's grown on me. And yeah, I think the more I played with it, it's definitely made the game a lot easier. So yeah, absolutely in the A, or the S, I mean. Okay, next we're gonna talk about the Twinsteer. The Twinsteer, this was really tough because I think I wanted to put the Twinsteer in the B just because of its use case, because you can't really use it for much other than hauling cargo and just maybe, packing vehicles and stuff on its frame and moving them and stuff like that. But the dang thing is so strong. It's so strong in what it does that I couldn't not put it in an A. So let's bust out the good old Twinsteer. So the Twinsteer can hold 4 pieces of cargo. It shares the second largest engine in the game. It can get 63-inch tires. Those are some of the larger tires in the game as well. I believe the Zikz has 61-inch tires, so I think this has larger tires than the Zikz. Let me cross-check that real quick. I don't want to spit out numbers and be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure that's right. If I can find it. Sorry about that. Yes, it does have bigger tires than the Zikz. So, yeah. Has the off-road gearbox, the high range. So having the high range for a heavy class vehicle is a little bit rare, especially with how powerful this vehicle is. If you've seen my review on it, or if you've watched anybody play with this, with the high range gearbox, it is crazy to see how fast this thing can go. Now you need to have you need to pay attention when you're driving this if you're using the high range gearbox, because you can tip over, especially with load on it. As you can see, I don't have the race suspension, and I also have the OHDs just to give it better stability. That's the way I run it. I don't use the high range gearbox normally, just because I don't want to just throw this thing and tip it over. But this truck actually was really strong even before they gave it the all-wheel drive upgrade in phase 1 over there in Amandra. And even without its all-wheel drive upgrade, I was seeing people on speedrun.com and other guys that do container deliveries and all those contests have really comparable times to vehicles like the Tega and such like that. And then they gave this thing this upgrade. And so I think just for the simple fact that this is a powerhouse and I've seen what this can do, yeah, it has to go into A. All right, so let's talk about the BOAR. The BOAR, for me, I do like it a lot, but I just couldn't say that it's a straight up A. So it's actually going to be a strong B for me. And it was actually going to be a C until they recently upgraded its tires. And we'll talk about those here in a second. I've used this actually. Also, it has the strongest engine in the game as well. It has the off-road gearbox, high range. It chews a ton of fuel, and just like the Twinsteer as well, it eats up a ton of fuel. I don't like that. I believe if this had the advanced special gearbox, I think it would tone down its fuel consumption. It only has 80 gallons capacity for a heavy truck. That's basically as much as the white Western Star has. So 300 liters. It does get a race suspension. Gets really large tires. So something we need to know about these tires. They recently gave it the heavyweights off-road heavy dualies, or the heavy doubles. It used to have the UODs, which were the American standard medium style truck, or medium style off-road tire. So sorry for all the uhs, but I'm trying to get through this. Anyways, so these are a much heavier tire, and you're gonna get a lot better grip quality out of these heavier set tires. And also you can gain more grip from putting more weight on the OHDs than you can the UODs. So whenever it got this, I tested this thing out again, and I was super impressed, so much that I actually took it and hauled some long logs with it over there in Maine, and I did it on stream, and I was extremely impressed. So the only thing is it can't do a lot of things. It does have the seismic vibrator add-on, the van body and such like that, but I believe if it had like a low saddle, it's a stretch to say it should have a low saddle for how high it sits, but it is a very good truck for high saddle uses. As you can see, it sits very high, so it's a pretty good truck. But yeah, I don't think for use case, I don't think it can go to the A for me. With the fuel capacity, the consumption, the lack of uses. So I think it stays down here in the B, right below the Navistar. Okay, let's talk about this next Navistar, the Navistar 49X. So the 49X, I believe, let's see, trying to think where I should put this guy. I think the 49X slides right in here. The 49X is another vehicle that has surprised me. Its weight and its size is comparable to most heavy duty class vehicles, but I'm going to show you some things that separate it from that. It's really cool. This engine here, I believe, is tied with the number 4 strongest engine in the game. That shocked me. I couldn't believe that. And then testing this thing out with weight on the back, with long logs and in high gear, and the high range gearbox, it just muscled through things. And it does sound like its older brother, the Twinsteer, so it's kind of cool. The engine sounds as well. It doesn't get a raised suspension. Its tires max out, with the UODs. If it had the OHDs, I think this thing would probably climb up into the A category for me. Okay, so this is something that I thought was really cool about this vehicle. So the White Western Star has the heavy winch. And if you think about it, when I talked about the size of this truck being comparable to the heavy duty class vehicles, none of them have the heavy winch. And the significance of this, I believe, is whenever you're going to tip over, usually there's a point wherever your winch just cannot save you. You're tilted, you're listing so far to one side. Whenever you throw your winch out and you try to start like reeling it in, your vehicle just continues to flip and it doesn't save you. With the heavy winch and how light this vehicle is, as soon as you attach that winch, you stop falling over. I have like 100% success rate with saving myself on the quick winch with this thing, if and only if my winch attaches to something strong. Okay, so yeah. But anyways, I thought this was really cool. This helps it to be an effective rescue vehicle as well, and yeah, it can do a lot of things. Can haul a bunch of add-ons, logs, etc. Yeah, it's a very, very, very good truck for heavy class. I think this should be in the heavy duty class. I'm not sure why they put it in the heavy class, but still, I think it is a strong B. And that's a review that's going to be coming up shortly, so look out for that one. Okay, so kind of leaving the best for last here. The Cat 745C. The Cat 745C is going to go right up here. And I'm super bullish on the Cat 745C because I've leaned upon the Cat more than I ever have leaned upon any truck that has 71-inch tires. The Cat has the second strongest engine in the game. It's one of the heavier vehicles in the game. It's coupled with the Advanced Special. Doesn't get a raised suspension option. Just straight up mud tires. Cannot complain about that. It has the switchable features. If it did have the always-on differential locking, this thing would just be, gosh, it would be so overpowered. But yeah, so you have the carrier container that you can carry a 2-slot cargo piece. The fuel carrier add-on, which is what I run with usually, just because, yeah, if I'm not carrying logs, yeah, I'm usually running around with this as a support vehicle, rescue, etc. This vehicle has got me through a ton of stuff, and anybody who's used it, they know that it's super stable. However, the articulated steering is can throw you off a little bit. It's just different, so you kind of have to get used to it. But overall, cat is an S for no question here. Okay, the Paystar 5600 TS. This is one I was debating on putting into the A category, but I think this goes up here. And for the reason its performance is just quite amazing, and its versatility is also impressive for a heavy class truck. So let's find it here. The Paystar 5600 TS, this is actually one of my favorite trucks they've added recently. It shares the second strongest engine in the game. It has the off-road gearbox. I believe because of the gearbox setup, it chews a lot more fuel. This thing probably chugs the most fuel that I've ever seen on a vehicle, other than a couple other ones that can chew some fuel up with the best of them. But this can eat through its fuel tank pretty darn fast, which is why you see it with the extended fuel tank on this thing right now, having more fuel than you could carry on a regular fuel tank. So it gets the race suspension upgrade, as you can see. I don't know why I have that there. And it gets 50-inch tires, and I usually use them with the OHDs just for stability. It's already a stable vehicle. Always on, I mean, it has a switchable diff lock, and then all-wheel drive as well. If it had diff lock again, this thing would be insane. It's quite impressive with the high-range gearbox just because of the sheer power. And it can do a ton of things. It can do this as well. It also has the long fuel tank. This fuel tank is basically bigger than the fuel tank that you would get as a hitch trailer by over 200 liters. So or 200 gallons. Very, very useful. So this is an amazing truck. The only really downfalls of it is the fuel capacity, and also its consumption. It's just hard to use with that. In that scenario, you just need to have a lot of support vehicles to fuel it up. In hard mode, it's going to be a challenge because, yeah, it just sucks a bunch of fuel. But this is one of the strongest vehicles in the game for sure. Okay, so here's the King. What can I say? The King goes at the top. There's nothing. There's really no doubts. This is pretty much the most objective thing I'm going to say this whole time on this video. The Zikz 605R is the king of SnowRunner. There's not another vehicle that can do what it can do. There might be vehicles that can get through heavy terrain at a better pace because of their larger tires. Probably, some of those vehicles have the 70-some inch tires, can get through things. But overall, for what the Zikz is, it can do the most with what it has. And this was a gift in a more. I think the developers just gave us this truck just so we could actually get through that region. It has capability of the roof rack, huge fuel tank at 101 gallons. I'm not sure what that translates to liters yet. I don't have my numbers in front of me. Largest engine in the game. The advanced special gearbox gives it pretty good fuel consumption considering it's the largest fuel tank, or the largest engine in the game. So yeah, it doesn't get a race suspension. I don't really think it needs it. And it only has one set of tires, the ZHMs, which are pretty darn good. Yeah, it snorkels up on top of its head. And something that it can do, it has a ton of add-ons for being a heavy truck, which is quite amazing. Gives it a ton of use. Something I did is I've had this set up here when I was in a moor, and I was actually shuttling vehicles or ferrying vehicles back and forth in the super conditions, because this is another vehicle that can just walk through ice shards, as well as some other taller vehicles like the Azov Antarctic, and I think the Cat can do it as well. But yeah, it's by large, this is the best vehicle in the game for sure. So anyways, guys, I'm sorry for the stuttering, the ums, and the coughing here. I am sick, like I said before, but that is my list for the tier list. I hope you guys enjoyed this. This was really hard for me to put together because I like a lot of these vehicles. There's rarely any vehicles that I don't like, and I really do like most of these on this list. And it was just really hard to actually rank these. This is probably the hardest category for me to rank, just because I like a lot of these vehicles as well. But I try to be as fair as possible. But I do have a little bit of bias there. But anyways, I hope you guys have enjoyed this, and I hope you have a wonderful day. And until next time, God bless and stay upright. And we'll see you next time.